My name is Captain Laura Bennett, and up until last year I thought I had everything I'd ever wanted. At 32 years old, I was married to Marcus, a charismatic corporate lawyer, and we lived in a spacious home just outside of San Antonio, Texas. We had been married for 7 years, and I truly believed we were the perfect team. I had served 8 years in the U.S. Army as a medical logistics officer before transitioning to civilian life. Marcus always said he was proud of my service. He loved telling our friends how I was tough as nails, but still the most caring woman he'd ever met. We had a beautiful life weekend barbecues, date nights, and dreams of starting a family soon. Marcus was the center of my world. He was ambitious, successful, and made me feel safe. He would surprise me with flowers after long days at the hospital where I now worked as a healthcare administrator. We'd stay up late talking about our future, laughing about silly things, and planning the life we wanted to build together. Our friends envied us. "You two are relationship goals," they'd say. I believed them. I felt lucky. I felt loved. But the strongest relationships can hide the deepest cracks. I still remember the last time I felt truly happy and secure. It was our anniversary dinner. Marcus raised his glass and said, "To the strongest, most honest woman I know, I'm so lucky you're mine." I smiled, completely unaware that those words would soon feel like the cruelest lie of my life. The first cracks appeared so subtly that I almost missed them. Marcus started working longer hours. At first, I understood he was up for partner at his firm, but the late nights became more frequent, and when he came home, he was distant. When I asked him about it, he'd brush it off with, "It's just a big case, Laura, you know how it is." Then there were the small lies. He told me he was at a work dinner one night, but when I saw a mutual friend the next day, they mentioned Marcus had canceled last minute. When I gently asked him about it, he got defensive and said I was overthinking things again. I hated how that made me feel like I was the problem. The biggest warning sign came during a conversation about starting a family. I had been tracking my health carefully because of some complications from an old injury during my military service. When I brought up seeing a specialist, Marcus suddenly became cold. "Why do you always have to make everything so complicated?" he snapped. It was the first time he had ever spoken to me like that. I brushed it off as stress. I told myself that every marriage had rough patches. I remembered the man who stayed up all night with me when I had nightmares about my deployment. I convinced myself he was still that man, but deep down, a quiet fear was growing. What if the person I trusted most was hiding something? What if I was ignoring the signs because I was scared of what I might find? The betrayal exploded in the worst possible place, a courtroom. Marcus had filed for divorce 3 months earlier, claiming I was mentally unstable and unfit to manage our finances. I was shocked. I never saw it coming. When I tried to talk to him, he refused to meet me. His lawyer did all the communicating. The court hearing for temporary orders was brutal. I sat there, still recovering from a flare-up of my old back injury from my military days. I had documentation, but Marcus's lawyer attacked me relentlessly. Then Marcus took the stand. He looked straight at the judge and said with a straight face, "Your Honor, my wife is a liar. She exaggerates her injuries. She's been manipulating me for years. She's not the woman I married." His words cut deeper than any wound I received in the Army. The man who once called me his hero was now calling me a liar in public. The humiliation was suffocating. I sat there frozen as he continued painting me as unstable and dishonest. Some people in the courtroom were actually nodding along. I felt completely alone. When it was my turn to speak, I could barely get the words out. I tried to defend myself, but Marcus just shook his head with a smug expression, like he had already won. That night I cried harder than I had in my entire life. The man I loved, the man I trusted with my life, had publicly humiliated me and tried to destroy my reputation. But what I didn't know was that the worst of the betrayal was still hidden, and the truth was about to come out in the most unexpected way. The days after that court hearing were some of the darkest I've ever experienced. I barely left my apartment. The humiliation of being called a liar by my own husband in front of strangers played on repeat in my mind. Friends I thought would support me started pulling away. Some even believed Marcus's version of events. I felt worthless. My military career, my years of service, my character, everything I was proud of was being questioned. The pain from my old injury flared up worse than ever, and the stress made it almost impossible to function. I stopped eating properly. I couldn't sleep. I would sit on the floor of my living room, surrounded by old photos of Marcus and me, wondering how our love turned into this nightmare. The man who once promised to protect me had become the person who hurt me the most. The worst part was the self-doubt. I started questioning my own memories. Was I crazy? Had I exaggerated my pain? Was I the problem? My sister tried to help, but I pushed her away. I felt like a burden to everyone. Some nights I wondered if Marcus was right. Maybe I really was broken. I had lost my marriage, my reputation, my confidence, and nearly my will to keep fighting. But something deep inside the soldier who had faced worse situations overseas refused to let me give up completely. I was drowning in despair when my sister showed up at my door with a determined look. "Laura, you need to see this," she said, handing me a folder. What I discovered inside changed everything. My sister had contacted one of my old Army colleagues. Through him, we reached out to Dr. Michael Ramirez, the military doctor who had treated me after my injury years ago. He still had all my original medical records. The records showed clear evidence. My injury was legitimate, well documented, and had been properly evaluated. There were multiple reports, imaging scans, and even notes from Dr. Ramirez recommending long-term care. None of it supported Marcus's claims that I was exaggerating or lying. But that wasn't the biggest twist. Dr. Ramirez revealed something even more shocking. During a follow-up examination years ago, he had discovered evidence that suggested Marcus had been emotionally manipulating me and discouraging me from seeking proper treatment, possibly to keep me dependent on him. He even had notes from a conversation where I expressed fear about how Marcus would react if I pushed for more medical support. The betrayal ran much deeper than I imagined. Marcus hadn't just called me a liar in court. He had been undermining my health and credibility for years. For the first time since the divorce began, I felt a spark of real anger, and with it, clarity. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't a liar. And now, I had proof. With Dr. Ramirez's records in hand, I finally had the weapon I needed. I spent the next few weeks working with my lawyer to build an airtight case. We gathered all my medical history, witness statements from fellow soldiers, and even character references from my time in the Army. I also started intense physical therapy again, determined to show the court how hard I was fighting to recover. This time, I wasn't going to be the victim. My plan was smart and calculated. I instructed my lawyer not to reveal Dr. Ramirez's involvement too early. I wanted Marcus to feel confident going into the next hearing. I wanted him to double down on his lies. Every day I pushed myself harder. I documented my recovery with videos and progress reports. I even started seeing a therapist to work through the emotional trauma so I could stay strong on the stand. I looked at an old photo of Marcus and me from our wedding day and whispered, You tried to break me. Now watch me rise. The revenge wasn't going to be loud or dramatic. It was going to be quiet, professional, and devastatingly effective. Marcus thought he had destroyed my credibility. He had no idea I was about to destroy his lies with the truth. The final court hearing was intense from the moment I walked in. Marcus sat across from me with his usual arrogant confidence. When his lawyer called him to the stand again, he repeated his claims that I was exaggerating my injuries, manipulating the system, and had been lying for years. He looked straight at the judge and said with fake sadness, "She's not the woman I married. She's become someone I don't even recognize." The words stung, but this time I was ready. My lawyer called Dr. Michael Ramirez to the stand. The moment the military doctor began speaking, the entire courtroom atmosphere shifted. He presented my original medical records, scans, and detailed notes. He explained my injury with clarity and authority, directly contradicting everything Marcus had said. Then came the most powerful moment. Dr. Ramirez looked at Marcus and said, "Not only are Mrs. Bennett's injuries real, but I have concerns that Mr. Bennett may have discouraged her from seeking proper treatment over the years." Marcus's face went pale. His lawyer tried to object, but the damage was done. The judge's expression changed completely as he reviewed the documents. When it was my turn to speak, I looked directly at Marcus and said calmly, "You called me a liar in front of everyone. You tried to humiliate me when I was at my weakest. But the truth always comes out." The judge ruled strongly in my favor. He granted me a much better settlement, ordered Marcus to cover my medical expenses, and publicly stated that Marcus's claims lacked credibility. As we left the courtroom, Marcus tried to approach me, but I simply walked past him with my head high. He had called me a liar. The military doctor proved him wrong. The months following the court hearing brought a profound sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The judge's ruling gave me the financial stability I needed to focus on my recovery. I continued physical therapy and eventually regained most of my mobility. More importantly, I regained my confidence. Marcus was forced to pay a significant settlement and cover my medical costs. His reputation at his law firm took a hit after word of the hearing spread. He tried to reach out once, saying he made mistakes, but I told him our only communication would be through lawyers regarding the divorce. I've since moved into a smaller but peaceful home near my sister. I returned to work part-time at the hospital, where my colleagues welcomed me back with open arms. I even started mentoring young female veterans who are transitioning to civilian life. The greatest healing has come from within. I learned to trust myself again. I no longer doubt my worth or my truth. I've made new friends and rebuilt relationships with family members who stood by me. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm thriving. If there's one thing my journey taught me, it's this: never let anyone make you doubt your own truth. Marcus tried to break me by calling me a liar in the most public and painful way possible. But the truth supported by an honorable military doctor set me free. Your past doesn't define you. Your resilience does. Even when the person who promised to love you tries to destroy you, you have the power to rise stronger than before. To anyone going through betrayal right now, hold on to your truth. The light always wins in the end. I was called a liar, but I proved I was the strongest woman in that room.